26 years. That's how long it's been since a new Supra has graced our shores. And in those intervening years, the Mark IV has indisputably become a Japanese automotive icon. It's not entirely surprising then that the Mark V, the 2020 GR Supra, enters the world with just a little bit of controversy. The reviews are coming in, but is the 2020 Mark V Supra a worthy successor to the Supra lineage? Many people still hold the opinion that despite a quarter century of technological advancement, the Mark IV Supra is still the superior car. Let's look at the Mark IV and see how it stacks up against the incoming rival. But first, let's find out how much a Mark IV in reasonable condition is going to cost. Instead of looking at a bunch of different websites, I really like Autotempest.com, which by the way is sponsoring this video. With just one click, you can browse a whole bunch of different websites like Cars.com, eBay, and other major competing automotive websites. If you're like me, you love to get a great deal on a car, so I highly encourage you to check out the link below in the description and share it with your friends. Let's see how much a Mark IV Supra costs. All right, let's go to the advanced search. Toyota Supra. Let's do any distance, and we're talking about 1993 to 1998 in the US, and let's see what we got. So on eBay here, which is the first set, we got one for $60,000, and let's take a look at that. All right, it is a twin turbo, leather 6-speed manual, one owner. That sounds pretty good. So $60,000, 138,000 miles on it. At least initially looks pretty clean. Then going down farther, we got a listing for $100,000. We got another one for $55,000, $135,000, $107,000, something in New Zealand. Then we got another one for $50,000. So I think you get the idea. These cars are pretty expensive to purchase. If you want a Mark IV, it looks like it's going to cost about $50,000 to $65,000 minimum to get one in good shape, reasonable condition in North America with a manual transmission. So back to the A90, the Mark V, does it have what it takes to become another sports car icon? If you can believe the comment section, clearly it does not. The commenters like to say, hey, it's nothing more than a BMW Z4 with a couple Toyota badges slapped on, but we know that's not the case. After the FT1 concept was released, BMW and Toyota had to agree on a joint chassis which they could use together but develop their own separate projects. Now, one of the key objectives, at least for BMW, was weight reduction, and that means making a car that was physically smaller than the FT1. After the FT1 concept car, Toyota and BMW had to sit down together and develop a chassis together that they were going to be happy with, that they could both use as an underlying pinning for both of their separate development projects. So when they did that, they had to set the hard points in the car that would never going to change again. That means the positions of the wheels, the wheelbase, where the transmission is going to be, where the engine is going to be situated. All those hard points had to be fixed early on in the project. And then after that, Toyota and BMW, once they had settled on the engine and this chassis, they went their separate ways. And I've read interviews with Tada-san, who is the chief engineer at Toyota, and other Toyota staff, and they have said that after this initial meeting where they had basically set the parameters for the car, they went their own separate ways and developed their own separate projects. One of the objectives from BMW is that they wanted to make a much lighter car than the previous generation Z4, which had really evolved into more of a GT car, kind of a cruiser. So ultimately what they got was something that is about 300 pounds lighter than the Z4, but for BMW it had to be a convertible. On the other hand, Toyota wanted to make a successor to the Supra, so it was going to be a coupe. And that was where the projects really sort of split off and went in their different directions. And again, according to interviews, the two teams didn't really talk to each other for quite a few years until they got into the final final development phases of the cars. So we really ended up with two pretty separate cars. I'm actually looking forward to driving them, hopefully back to back. I don't know that too many people have at this point. So back to the key story. What are the key elements that a Supra has to have, the new one, in order to become a sports car icon. For one thing, it has to be a great performer. Nowadays, this is not back in the 90s, it's not enough just to have a car that's going to have a lot of power and be able to do freeway pulls, be able to do stuff with the drag strip. It's got to be an all-round performer. If you think about the competition, at least from the domestic manufacturers, the Camaro and the Mustang, which are probably closest, they are both really good handling cars right now. That wasn't always the case. Toyota's got to compete with that. So let's look at the reviews and see if it really does meet the requirements of being a sports car. So I think Matt Farah from The Smoking Tire probably has the best review from a driving perspective. He is absolutely hooning it on track, and apparently Matt really loved the car.
I like the downshift responsiveness of the gearbox. It does listen to me. Getting some oversteer. See, it's really actually quite fun to balance.
I encourage you to watch his entire review, but he went on and on and on about how balanced the car is, how easy it is to take it from understeer into oversteer just with a little bit of throttle modulation, and that is a recurring theme that I've heard from other reviewers as well.
If we were to compare it to the Mark IV we just drove, this car objectively is better in every single way.
And with a quarter century of development, I would hope it really is better in every single way.
But fortunately, it is a very good automatic transmission. So it's the ZF 8-speed that I've, bragged about endlessly in any video which I've driven a car in it. I love this ZF 8-speed automatic.
Engineering Explained has done a couple videos on the 8-speed ZF transmission. Matt Farah mentioned it also. Apparently this is a fantastic transmission. I've driven it in BMWs. I really like it. Toyota has tuned this transmission separately for the Supra to make it basically their own style to fit the character of the car. So everybody wants to know, will this BMW engine, the B58C, will it be reliable? According to Tada-san and other people at Toyota, they had full access to the engine. They've been allowed to test it, modify it, send parts back to Japan, basically test it and change things as they see fit, and they say that this engine does meet Toyota's fairly stringent reliability standards. Of course, time will tell, but I think at least the early indications are pretty good. We will have to wait and see on that. So back to the central question. Does the new Supra have what it takes to become another sports car legend, another icon? So looking at the price, it starts at $50,000 US, and that is actually quite a bit less than the Mark IV. The Mark IV in 1996 was around $50,000. They lowered it a little bit later because sales were not that great of it. So if you convert that into 2019 dollars, accounting for inflation, the car would probably be at about $70-something thousand right now if they had priced it the same way that they had for the Mark IV. So actually it's more affordable, and that Toyota has said has been one of the objectives of this car. Does it perform well? Clearly it does. I think Toyota is definitely hitting the marks right out of the gate, 0 to 60 in 4.1 seconds. While it's not an absolute rocket yet, again, that's what the aftermarket is for, and we know that Toyota is encouraging the aftermarket. And when was the last time that you saw a manufacturer actively encouraging the aftermarket? It doesn't happen all that often. If you remember Mitsubishi, they were denying warranty claims on anybody's modified car. And obviously I can't say if Toyota's going to deny warranty claims too, but it does look like the aftermarket is being strongly encouraged around this car. So I think those are the elements that go into making an iconic sports car, at least for the Supra. I think they're all there. We're going to have to wait a couple years and see if it really plays out the way that I think everybody wants it to. I would like there to be a strong aftermarket for the car. I'm fully in support of having a new chassis for the first time from a manufacturer in 7 or 8 years. Now, of course, you might think the Mark IV is better, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. The Mark IV is an absolutely awesome car. If you're considering getting one, there's a couple things to keep in mind to take into consideration. It is roughly a 21 to 26-year-old car, and if you're not familiar with old cars, it doesn't matter how reliable they are on paper, things break and they need more maintenance. Things that don't really show up in consumers' reports, reliability ratings, are things like seals and gaskets. Things like door seals, weather stripping, they just crack with age. And also there are bushings around the car that mount the subframe to the frame of the car and other places. Those bushings wear out with time. I've replaced a lot of them on old cars myself, and it makes a huge difference because when they crack and they get soft and sometimes they even fall out, the car starts to feel a little bit mushy. it's actually quite expensive and difficult to replace all of the bushings on an old car, so that's something to take into consideration as well. Cooling systems will get clogged up, bearings will fail. These are all normal things that are expected for a 20-year-old plus car. And there's two things you can do about that. If you've got the mechanical aptitude and you've got enough tools and space, you can definitely go and work in your own car. I love that. I highly encourage it. But realistically speaking, not everybody has the aptitude and the skills and the space to do it. So then you're left with maintaining the car at some kind of shop. And the bottom line is it's going to cost more to maintain a 20-year-old car than it is a brand new one. Those are just plain facts. And you're really making a decision between having a car that you can hop in and drive right now, perhaps even a daily, versus what is essentially a project car. When you got a car that has cost you $50, $60, $70, $80, $90, $100,000 or more in the aftermarket, is that really the car that you're going to be taking to the track and hooning when you've got an asset which is probably not depreciating at this point? That's a pretty hard decision to make. I have a little bit of personal experience with that. I own a BMW 1M, which has sort of become a bit of a collector's car, and I admit to not driving it as much as I used to. It does sit in my garage, and I don't enjoy it as much as I'd like to because I don't take it to the track anymore either, because I am concerned about losing the vehicle. It's a lot of money. If you want to get into a Supra and you find that the Mark IV prices are kind of getting out of reach right now, I think the best option probably is to wait 3 to 5 years until the A90s go into the used market. Hopefully they're going to be a little bit cheaper. And until that happens, I'm just going to leave you with this.